President.
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, I rise today to honor the extraordinary life and work of one of Oregon's finest, Ursula K. LeGuin, who after a long life passed away in my hometown of Portland on January 22nd at the age of 88. You'd have a tough time overstating Mrs. LeGuin's impact on American literature, particularly on the genres of fantasy and science fiction. She didn't invent science fiction or fantasy literature, but what she did in true Oregon fashion is she redefined them. Millions of school children in Oregon and around the world know her best as the author of the unforgettable Earthsea series. But she also wrote essays, poetry, and short stories throughout her life. To the end, she fiercely resented the constant attempts to pigeonhole her as a sci-fi author. Over 4 decades, she upended conventions, shattered ceilings, and inspired generations of readers and authors. She is going to be missed even as her legacy lives on. Ursula LeGuin was born Ursula Krober on October 21, 1929 in Berkeley, California. Her parents were both successful anthropologists who encouraged their kids to think and to question. Exposed to mythology and science fiction at an early age, she soon grew tired of what she would later describe as white men and soldiers going forth and conquering the universe. A shy young woman, she escaped the anxieties of adolescence by reading authors like Austen, Shelley, and Tolstoy in her local public library. She went on to Radcliffe College, graduating Phi Beta Kappa in 1951. She earned a master's degree from Columbia University the following year and won a prestigious Fulbright Fellowship to continue her studies in Paris. She met fellow Fulbright scholar Charles LeGuin on her way there, and they were married shortly thereafter. The pair returned to the United States and ultimately settled in Oregon in the late 1950s when her husband took a job at Portland State University. She focused on the couple's 3 children and on her writing, returning to science fiction with Rocannon's World in 1966. 2 years later, she published A Wizard of Earthsea, the first in a series of highly acclaimed fantasy novels that have remained in print to the delight of millions. I can't imagine it's an easy feat for any author to create an entire universe that sticks in the minds of readers for generations. In building Earthsea, Mrs. LeGuin joined that elite group of fiction writers like Tolkien or C.S. Lewis who have done just that. More impressively, she used her writing to push back against injustices and social constraints. She wrote about environmental destruction, about feminism, gender inequality, about racism, and about war and peace. She wrote about women protagonists and about non-white heroes when they were even less commonly highlighted than they are today. She wrote about multi-dimensional characters and others who sought to better themselves and their societies rather than to bend others to their will. The more Mrs. LeGuin wrote, the more people would read, and the more the awards started to pile up. She racked up awards over the course of her career like few authors have. Multiple Hugo, Nebula, Locus Award, a National Book Award, a Newbery Medal, and a Pushcart Prize. In 1997, she was shortlisted for the Pulitzer Prize. She twice won the Hugo and Nebula Awards in the same year for 1969's The Left Hand of Darkness and for 1974's The Dispossessed. I'd be here until next week if I tried to list all her achievements. But because we have a rule in the Wyden household against filibustering friends, let me just say that in 2000, the Library of Congress made official what all of Oregon had long known. It declared Ursula LeGuin was a living legend for her contributions to American literature. The fact is, Mr. President, we love, our bookstores, and I very often kid Michael Powell and my wife Nancy as LeBron James and Damian Lillard of bookstores. But the fact is, Mrs. LeGuin has been in demand in bookstores and libraries for decades, and she's always been sharing that wisdom in her books with visitors from near and far. Thanks to her example and her influence, generations of women writers have blazed new trails and defied old dogmas. Mr. President, as a dad who knows full well the importance of reading in a child's life, this is really a special honor today to be able to stand before this distinguished body and remember Ursula K. LeGuin, her life and her legacy. Her pioneering writing is going to continue to make readers challenge their conceptions and contemplate their role in this enormously vast universe for decades to come. Her long career's worth of great works will be treasured far into the future, and with that, and especially appreciating the opportunity to recognize this extraordinary work of a woman who did so much to promote writing and attract young readers at home in Oregon, I yield the floor and appreciate the chance to have been able to recognize Ursula Le Guin today before the United States Senate. I yield the floor.